Hello, and welcome to the Reed Temple online worship service. We're glad to be at Reed Temple, and so glad you decided to join us. Thank you for worshiping with us.
What's up, everybody? I'm Reverend Chania Dillard, but y'all can call me Reverend Nia.
I am Reverend Tiffany Brooks, affectionately known as Reverend Tiff.
I'm Reverend Demetrius Price, known as Reverend Price. And welcome to
Millennial Conversations.
Millennial Conversations are conversations that are affecting millennials all across the world. It's concerns and issues that is affecting millennials everywhere. And so we're going to take some time and talk about that, y'all.
Make sure you watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, and at reedtemple.org/watch. Also follow us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Remember to repost and make sure you hashtag RTMC for Reed Temple Millennial Conversations. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns you want to add to the conversation, please feel free to send your inquiries to yam@reedtemple.org. That is yam, Y-A-M, @reedtemple.org.
So grab your notepads, your notebooks, your pens, and your pencils, and join us for another great dialogue among millennials in tonight's rap session. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Millennial Conversations. This is the month of March we are in now, and it is Women's History Month. That's right, so that means all month we'll be talking about topics and things that pertain to women. Now, fellas, don't trip. You'll have your time as well, and this will continue to be a time where we'll all learn and grow together. And to kick off this month, we are joined by our special guest, Sister Hannah Jones.
Yes, and if you are watching, please do not forget to share using the hashtag RTMC. Do not forget to share using the hashtag RTMC. Don't forget, you can also watch this on YouTube. You can watch this on the Reed Temple Facebook group page. You can also watch this by going to reedtemple.org/ just reedtemple.org, actually. Go to watch and you can watch it.
/watch.
/watch. Thank you, Hannah.
That is it. And again, our special guest tonight is Hannah Jones. So Hannah, welcome to the set of Millennial Conversations. For those of you who do not know who Hannah is a social impact strategist, storyteller, and creative who focuses on using her gifts to develop people, ideas, and places to make social impact. She is an advocate for social equity and for racial equity and centering Black women. And she loves negotiating social change. And so tonight's discussion will be centered around women in politics. And so our scripture focus will be Judges chapter 4 and verse 9. And in the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, it reads this way. And she said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. And so let's talk a little bit about Deborah's story. We all know, and for those who don't know, Deborah in the Bible was the only woman judge.
Yep.
The only woman who was a judge at that time. And so let's talk about her story.
So for me, you introduced this when you said, this is our scripture for this week. And I knew about Deborah, and I knew about, in terms of the political piece there, but what I love is there's so much relevance today in her story. She doesn't question God's voice, and she's not concerned about who follows or who doesn't follow. She's more concerned in having faith in what God told her to do. That she stands in the gap, and she's unapologetic. And I love it. And I love how she's introduced. We don't know much about how she rose to the judge that she was, but she's introduced already as this political figure almost, right? And uses her voice to make the change. And I love at the end, it says, after the battle, there was peace in the land for 40 years.
40 whole years.
40 whole years. So that's my takeaway from it, which shows the power of women, their voice, and the audacity to follow God.
Absolutely. Because, of course, Deborah, in addition to being a judge, Bible says she was a prophet or a prophetess, as we would call it.
Exactly. Hannah summarized all of my thoughts very adequately.
Oh, no.
Listen, Hannah was in her word. Y'all hear?
Right.
She know him
Hannah
for
read
herself.
ahead. Hannah read ahead in the scripture, okay?
You got
Hannah read
this life.
But no, Deborah is an amazing story to also look at as a leadership model, right? Because some people also call, when you read in it, the song of Deborah too, which is super powerful because the only song that we really hear of is in Moses, right? So we're looking at Deborah from a wider vantage point too. Like there's something very special about Deborah, and I want us to all continue to remember that, especially as women. There is something special about all of us, and like you were saying, never to question where God has us, but most importantly, what you said is that Deborah was always in tune with God's voice, right? And she was always in tune with using her prophetic voice in order for there to be 40 years of peace and all the other things that had gone on in the story. That's actually very juicy, so I think you all should go read the entire thing. But she helps us see marrying, this is a controversial phrase, marrying the secular with the sacred, if you will. Right. Some people have a problem with that phrase, but for this specific time, that's what we're gonna call it.
Absolutely. And so even with the verse that we read about when she informed them, like, listen, I know, because the verse before that said, if you go, I'll go, but if you don't go, I'm not going. But she said, regardless of what you think, bruh, like, Sisera will be delivered into the hands of a woman.
Exactly.
Right, a black woman.
Right, this is still gonna happen.
Amen. He will be delivered into the hands of a woman.
Right.
And so I would dare to believe that to be a woman, a prophetess, and then the only one there was, that there had to be a certain assertiveness that she displayed. I like your word. You said audacity. She had to have a specific type of audacity. And so I want to pose this question because women in power are oftentimes mislabeled as arrogant. Right. And so as it relates to women in politics, why do you think that is? And is there a difference between arrogance and confidence? Hannah, what do you think?
I have to say this, and the truth is gender bias, right? We are in a patriarchal society. That means we're in a world that has centered men. More overarching in America, just generally, we've centered whiteness, but under that, we've centered men. And because of that, a woman is aggressive and a man is assertive. We often find ourselves forgiving men easily and demonizing women differently. And I think you have to have this sense of there's a thin line between conceit and confident. And you have to have that confident. And often when we advocate for something, we're told we're not humble. When we advocate for gender equity pay, or we advocate for equity or fairness, they say, humble yourself because you're advocating for yourself and for others. And so there's this sense of being unapologetic. So I think because we're not centered in this patriarchal society, we are viewed that way. However, what I love about Black women, because we said women in general, Black women are not waiting to be centered. We go and center ourselves.
Preach.
And a lot of that centering comes from a place of pain and change that needs to happen. A lot of Black women who've lost their mothers, Trayvon Martin's mother and Michael Brown's mother and Aubrey's mother. And because of that pain, we are unafraid. We are unapologetic. And we take that and we lead change and we center ourselves.
Right.
And we center ourselves for others, for other women to fall behind. I have a daughter. So that's what's at stake. And like we said in Deborah, on the other end of that is 40 years of peace.
Right.
So it's not arrogance. Right? It's for the people.
Yeah.
And not just for women, it's for the people, for the society, for the culture, for all of us. So that's my takeaway about why we're often viewed that way. And I think the society will shift and change, and I won't get ahead because we see some of that change happening today because we've decided to center ourselves and the allyship of men and other races have involved themselves as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Everyone, don't forget to also have this conversation in the chat as well, and don't forget to share. I did want to answer your question on, is there a difference between arrogance and confidence? And absolutely there is. Confidence comes with the sureness, and so does arrogance, but the difference between confidence and arrogance is that arrogance is willing to do whatever it takes to stay in position. So that means I'll manipulate, that means I'll abuse, that means I'll step on this person or that person to get to this or that, where confidence is just a sureness in the knowledge of I know what I am doing and I am here. And back to Deborah, because I don't want to go away from that. I am here because God has placed me here, but I'm also here because I have been graced to be given the knowledge I have to ensure that whatever we're doing is moved forward.
The intentions are different.
The intentions
are
exactly.
different.
The intentions and the actions are different, but also the end goal is different. Confidence takes into account the collective we, where arrogance focuses on the I. And that is the major difference between arrogance and confidence. And people, for me, there's no thin line between both, right? Like, you know someone who is arrogant and you know someone who is confident. Confident is someone I can trust to lead us. Arrogance, I'm looking at you like, I don't trust you for the fact that, what are you willing to do? Who are you willing to throw under the bus? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to move you ahead? And what does that happen to the collective we, the collective purpose of why we have all come here to do whatever work that we have been called to or invited to do?
Right.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with both of you. Took literally snatched answers right out of my throat again.
Piggyback.
And so I echo what both of you have stated, but it's something you said when you in your assessment of the difference between arrogance and confidence. And so you said something about, especially specifically for Deborah, how it wasn't, about her, but it was also about her people. It reminded me of Queen Esther.
Yeah.
And so while I didn't, at that time when I was, preparing, I didn't consider, but now that I think about it, even in what you said, it literally, quickened in me about Queen Esther's story.
Right.
And so even though, yes, she was a, undercover, Hebrew in the King Ahasuerus' castle, when it came to the fact that it was time for her exodus, I like to call it, when it was time for a change, she prayed and fasted, but then she also got her people to pray and to fast. And she said, the only way you can go before the king is if he bids you to come. And he ain't called my name or my number in 30 days? Yeah. And so I ain't fitting to go there, but let me tell you something. If y'all pray with me, if y'all fast with me, then I'm saying I'll do it. And if I die, let me die. If I perish, let me perish. And so when I look at that, in her leadership role, right, in her role as a confident leader, she was careful, she was calculated, but she was confident,
strategic.
Very strategic.
Yes.
And she developed that strategy that not only freed her, but also freed her people, but also brought the enemy directly to his knees. And so I definitely think
she was the negotiator of social change.
Exactly.
Every role is needed: the prophetess, the warrior, the negotiator, the at the table, those who march, those who negotiate, those who advocate, and there's so many women behind it, those who write the story, who tell the story. Come on now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of writing and telling the story, so let's talk about what role women have historically played in politics, right? We know that Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman, and I believe the first woman to even run
For presidency.
for the presidency of the United States. And so, Tiff, what do you have to add to the conversation about women historically in politics?
So when we talk about women in politics, it's such a layered conversation because I have to divorce the two between Black women in politics and everybody else. Okay, I am unapologetically Black. Okay.
Blacker than
The only way to be.
I'm Black, y'all. I'm Black, y'all. I'm Black. Okay. Anyways, we've always been the centering point.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate reality is because we have been so oppressed, and especially talking about intersectionalities, it's not until the last minute, all of a sudden they listen to us and then it's just like, 40 years apiece. They wait till it gets too late. And you know, we see trust Black women. Ooh. And for me, it's like, trust Black women. Yes, trust women. Yes. Trust us in this space, because quite frankly, the reason why we're ascending quickly into leadership roles, because now it's like, you know what, we just gonna do it.
Right.
You're not gonna give us space to do it, we gonna do it, and you're gonna get mad.
Right.
And that's just, it is what it is. But we have always been the centering point.
That's good.
Our voices are, half the time, let's really talk about it, right? Half the time, even when men give certain points, half the time they just piggybacked, and it wasn't really their point anyway.
Preach.
It came from a woman that was in the room, or that was sitting around them, or a woman that they were talking to, or in a meeting, because this has happened to me before. Being in a meeting, I said something, homeboy decided to say the same thing I said, and it was like, oh my God, such a great idea. And I was like, wait, no.
I said it 5 minutes ago.
No, beloveds.
Right.
That was me, and you're gonna give me a credible citation for it.
And that is sometimes looked at as arrogance to say, wait a minute, about the credit. And why the credit is important, I posted this last week. The credit is so important because it makes room and way for the professional opportunities that what we did, you know, obviously would grant us. And so people think it's about our name being called. No, everyone's going to benefit from your idea but you when you don't get credit. And so when we're talking about credit, we're asking just to benefit from the genius that comes out of us. Everyone else will benefit from it already.
Yeah.
And so it's not an arrogant thing to say, wait a minute, what about intellectual property? What about integrity? What about those things?
But it's also wisdom and discernment, knowing when to use your voice, how to use your voice, and the why behind it. Like, it's wisdom and discernment too,
knowing
right?
when.
Because sometimes, depending on what it is, I don't care who said it, as long as we get the work done.
Right.
So I can say it, and if y'all say that Johnny said it, and y'all give Johnny, can we get the work done?
It could be a part of the strategy.
Right.
The strategy, it may kind of say to people, listen, this is not going to come off well from me with my role, my position, possibly. And don't lose focus of what the point is, right? And sometimes I've sent people in spaces, say, here, take these notes, go forth. Be great and change the world. Yeah. And you've still played that part. How many Black women have done that historically?
Child.
All of us.
We still doing it.
Since the dawning of age.
And I think about Ida B. Wells when you talk about women in history. Ida B. Wells was a storyteller. She born in 1868. She goes to college, gets kicked out of college, arguing with the college president. But she becomes one of the greatest writers about lynching. 4,000 plus lynches documented between, I think, 1890 and 1950. And she faces sexism and racism and everything else. But her reasoning is her friends, 2 Black males, were lynched and murdered unjust. And she goes on to make these strides in history. She is a storyteller. And because of her voice, she took up, we talk about authenticity, you said she was a prophet, Deborah was a prophetess. that gift part is important. That purpose part is important. She took up this cause. It was not given to her. She didn't wait for somebody to say, here, do this.
Yep.
She said, I'm going to have the courage to do this and write about it. And because of her, lynching was highlighted across the world. And all eyes were on America and their behavior in the late, post-Reconstruction. She was not a politician. We're talking about women in politics. The politician holds office. Politics, you don't have to have necessary position or title. You just get up and lead.
Yep.
And she got up and lead.
She got up and lead.
So we're talking about women in politics. I'm not an elected official. You're not an elected official, but yet we're using this platform to make change.
I'm gonna need y'all to stop snatching what I want to say out my throat. I'm so serious. I'm gonna really need y'all to stop because I literally was gonna say that.
Say it.
Okay,
From your lens.
Piggyback. There is a difference between being a politician means you're in office, but being or serving in politics meaning you want to evoke change in your communities, in your state, in your nation, in your country, in the world. Because I believe even the decisions that we make today not only just impact those that are coming behind us, but it impacts those who are watching us from Africa. It impacts those watching us from Asia. It impacts those watching us from South America. And so it's more, again, it's always going to be bigger than ourselves, which is why we sit as confident black women, right? Not arrogant black women, because we understand that it's not just about us. There are so many people connected to us and in our bloodline. Those who've come before us, whose shoulders we stand upon, but then those who are coming behind us. Y'all know Sankofa. We're not going to get into that right now.
That was in my mind. That's in my mind. We're talking liberation right now.
Exactly.
We need to hear from Reverend
You know,
Nia.
because Jesus was a liberation theologian. I'm just saying.
This womanist liberation.
I'm just saying.
Do it.
And for those who think that there's nothing political about the Bible, you are absolutely wrong. The Bible is political.
Politics.
But again, we don't have a lot of time to talk about these things. But this is definitely still wonderful stuff. With the current trajectory of our nation and the euphoric sense of pride and inspiration that has filled the hearts of women everywhere, specifically with the election of our current vice president of these yet to be United States of America in the person of Vice President Kamala Harris. Do we foresee more women of color becoming involved in politics or becoming politicians? As we've learned, there's a difference. Why or why not?
Tiffany, you want to go?
Okay, sure. Let me
Tiff, you
surmise.
about to run for president?
Let me surmise my thoughts.
Run.
Can you imagine me running for president?
I sure could.
I couldn't do it. I'd be ready to.
Hashtag vote for Tiffany.
We throw it all the way. Okay. I do foresee more women becoming engaged in politics. But here's the thing, though. There are so many women who are already in politics as politicians and just in politics, however you define that. I think what will happen is a greater amplifying of their voices.
That's right.
And seeing them more. And when I say them, I'm talking about the collective we, because everywhere I go is a political space. Now we're talking about the public square. And listen, we could go down a rabbit hole. Right, we're talking about the public square and what that looks like, especially in terms of the church, especially in terms of what we do outside, our jobs, the organizations we're a part of, the organizations we're not a part of. I think our voices will start to be even more amplified, especially as technology, so technology is key, especially as technology advances and as we have greater platforms that can literally be right from my living room. We're gonna hear more amplified voices, but what I'm most excited about is that I'm thinking about my previous students who I used to teach, who would, in my classroom, have conversations that they didn't have a space to have them at, or they were very minimal spaces, and now them having the confidence to say, you know what, I'm gonna go on TikTok, I'm gonna go on Snapchat, I'm gonna go on Instagram, I'm gonna go on, and whatever other social media or media platforms that's out there, I know we're gonna see more writers being amplified.
Yeah.
We're gonna hear more voices being amplified, and the more we saturate those places and spaces, and the more mentorship. Mentorship is key. Mentorship is key. We mentor to leave legacy. We don't mentor to make copycats. That's not the purpose of mentorship, right? And so we need greater mentorship to make sure that these voices continue to be groomed in their own prophetic voices, so that as we evolve, we continue to grow and those voices are amplified. So my answer is yes and yes. We'll see more people joining, but the people that have already been here, they are now, hey, here's the platform that you have been working so delicately and silently behind the scenes in. Here's your opportunity.
Right. Hannah?
So I will say, at the top, I talked about a patriarchal society and centering historically what we've done. However, think about Fannie Lou Hamer. She did what Stacey Abrams has done, right? And so we press on to turn and shift the paradigm. The paradigm will shift. With pain, there's progress. It will shift. I think I have to acknowledge Chania, who's the founder of the Anti-Blackness Reader. She talks about, where is the Office of Equity and Commission of Black Folk, right? We're going to see some of those things happening. And as those things happen, and we have more Stacey Abrams repeating what Fannie Lou Hamer has done, you'll have more Kamala Harris. You'll have someone officially be the President of the United States. And like what Tiffany said, there are other roles in politics that kind of do the assist for the rebound. And we're all, the collective is so important. And for those out there, this is not a man-bashing or a race-bashing session. It will take all of us. Understand what allyship means to shift paradigms and change the status quo. We will see a change. However, it is counterculture. It is uphill. Expect to be targeted. And this is why when we're in the church, I have to pray. I have to fall to my knees from what happens from this work. And I worry about those who don't believe in something to keep them sane and changing the status quo. It is a lot of work. So we will see the change. It will shift. And like you said, behind us are those who are going to carry the torch and keep it going. And I'm excited about what's happened with our first Black and Indian Vice President of the United States of the yet-to-be United States of America.
Yet to be, right.
Absolutely, and definitely to Tiff's point, there are other facets in which people can serve. Like, it's not just about the presidency or the vice presidency, because quite frankly, your state representatives, your mayor, those people can do more for you in your local communities than the president will ever be able to do. And so while we look at the presidential races and elections and things like that as like this, woohoo, you're the president, but it's like, but you can't do nothing for my block. You can't do much for, this 10-block radius right here. I need to know who my state representatives are. I need to know who is my mayor. Who are the people that's going to speak on behalf of me and my neighborhood.
And tell your story. You mentioned communications, because it's those stories. I said this on the podcast 2 weeks ago. I said storytelling is a form of evidence. And in order to make these changes, we have to bring these stories to the table. So these politicians that hold these offices, local and in from the top section of our government, storytelling is important. Communications, when I say I fell into communications and marketing, it is to tell the story, to make a change, to amplify social good, to amplify what is happening. There are people in this church who work tirelessly to change this community that we don't even know their names and who they are and how many hours they put in, right? I'm meeting with these ministry leaders. I say, oh my gosh, you do this. It's amazing. And I want to take pen to paper and I want to write an article about it. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And so communication and social media and writing will be key to that as well.
See, communication is our birthright.
Right.
We talk about the free press. That is one of the biggest tools that we utilize to get our voices amplified.
Right.
Absolutely. Ladies, this has been phenomenal. It has been awesome, but our time is up for today.
Really?
We do want to thank our special guest, Sister Hannah Jones, for coming and blowing our minds and kicking us off in this Women's History Month. Millennial Conversation segment that we have. Listen, if you're joining us tonight, we don't ever want to take for granted that everybody knows who Jesus is. We mentioned a lot about using your prophetic voices and standing up in the true authenticity of who you are. In fact, a couple of the points from tonight is strive to be people of confidence versus people of arrogance. And also understand that storytelling is a form of evidence. And so make sure that you're telling your stories. But in telling your stories, we want to make sure you're able to tell somebody how you know Jesus. And so if you don't know Jesus on tonight and you've never accepted him as your personal Lord and Savior, we invite you to get to know this Jesus on today. Maybe you are already saved, have already received salvation, but don't have a church home where you're growing, not just where you're going, because you can go to church and not grow in church, right? And so maybe that's you and you don't have a church home where you're growing, or maybe you just want to recommit or rededicate your life back to Christ. Life started lifing you at some point in time. But somebody told you about Jesus and you had y'all were rolling tight for a while, but then after a while, you stopped talking to him. You kind of put Jesus on the back burner. The saving grace is God has never left his position. And so God is just waiting for you to come back saying, all right, bro, what's up? Let's just talk. Let's hash this thing out and get back into right relationship with God. And so if you're unsaved, not sure if you're saved, don't even know what it means to be saved, or if you need a church home where you're growing, not just where you're going, or if you want to recommit or rededicate your life back to Christ, or you just want special prayer, somebody's faith to connect with your faith, would you head on over to www.readtemple.org/cares? And someone will certainly be able to reach out to you. Also, if you're watching and you are enjoying everything that's happening here with Millennial Conversations, that's here at Reed Temple AME Church, and you want to sow into the life of this ministry, not only so that we can continue Millennial Conversations, but that we can continue to do the work of the community, so that we can continue to pour into the community the things that we are all in need of, won't you just grab your smartphones? We all have ours out. Grab your smartphones and head to Cash App. $Reed Temple AME Church. It's all spelled out. $Reed Temple AME Church on Cash App. And go ahead and sow a seed into the life of this ministry. Until next time, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another Millennial Conversations.
Peace out.
Thank you for worshiping with us today, and we hope you will join us again. You can visit our Reed Temple YouTube channel to view other worship services. Stay in touch with us by friending us on Facebook and following us on Twitter and Instagram. We look forward to worshiping with you again.